Chooser Legend 7 is finally here, and this is going to be my breakdown and analysis of these units, and you can have a better idea of what these units bring to the table. So the first Brave unit that we have is Brave Female Corrin, who's a colorless armored dragon, and being a colorless armored dragon is always good for safe tanking because you're not affected by the weapons triangle advantage or disadvantage. So here we can see the terrain that she has got going on, and I'll definitely go over that more in detail. So she's got Vala Stone as her preferred weapon, which gives her minus on special cooldown. After she has acted, she can apply the Divine Vein Stone terrain in the space that she's at and in the spaces within 2 spaces of her for 1 turn. And this is going to be the new thing that FEH is going to be introducing, basically a new era of FEH where we're going to be having new terrains that these units can apply, kind of like how you can do that in Fire Emblem Engage. So Divine Vein Stone terrain applies for the unit and the allies. It is not going to be applicable for the enemy, kind of unlike Engage, I guess. And then it can pretty much grant +6 defense and resistance in combat, reduce damage by specials by flat 10, which is quite a lot, and then also reduces damage by AoE specials by 50%. So that is going to be making Corrin into a pretty strong Far Savior, and Divine Vein effects do not actually stack up. You cannot have 2 Divine Vein Stone effects, which is, thank God for that, so that's pretty good. And any kind of recent Divine Vein effect is going to be replacing the existing ones. So for example, Divine Vein Flame from Gullveig is actually going to be replacing the stone terrain of Corrin. So that is pretty much how it functions. So you're not going to be able to stack up multiple of them, and the most recent one is going to be the active one, and it is going to be cancelling out the previous one. So that's how it is going to be working, and this kind of terrain is actually pretty good for the support. So Corrin is definitely going in strong with this kind of support. And then from her weapon, if she's at or above 25% HP, then she can inflict -5 debuff to all stats of the opponent in combat. And she also gets full null follow-up, which is extremely good as a fast armor unit. So she doesn't really have to run Savvy Fighter to get that. And then finally she can get 30% damage reduction per attack, which is really good for tanking as a fast unit because she's not going to be having the raw bulk of many of the safe tanks. But still, like, she is a 205 BST unit. She definitely has much better raw bulk than many of the safe tanks that are faster. So that is her weapon, which is really good. And then she comes with Armored Flow, which is going to be a 2 cooldown special for her. And it's just going to be boosting up damage by 40% of her resistance. And keep in mind that the damage reduction this provides is not pierceable by Deadeye, Lethality, or any of those specials. So on top of the Divine Vein Stone effect, which gives you like 10 flat damage reduction against special, keep in mind that if the special triggers, Armored Flow is still going to be there with its damage reduction. So that is a lot of damage reduction against specials. And she also has her exclusive slotted skill in Realms United. So this does provide her distant counter, which is nice that she doesn't really have to run a Sacred Seal off. And then if the foe initiates combat or if foe's HP is at or above 75%, then she can inflict -7 debuff on all stats of the opponent and also reduces damage from foe's first attack by flat 7. And here the first attack does mean the first strike and the second strike of a Brave attack as well. So that is pretty good if she's going to be facing any kind of Brave opponent. So having this kind of flat damage reduction is extremely good, and we have actually seen this on Anankos and also on skills like Shield Pulse and Hardy Fighter before. So this kind of flat damage reduction is extremely good with the Divine Vein Stone terrain that she can apply, because keep in mind she's getting the 10 flat damage reduction on specials of the opponent, and then she's got Armored Flow damage reduction, and then she's got the 7 flat damage reduction. So all of the damage reduction makes her into a pretty solid unit, and just like in the trailer that we saw, like Arvel's Glacies does like 1 damage to her, and that is pretty insane because Arvel has got a lot of resistance. So her slotty skill is basically going to be a better distant counter, and then she's got Counter Roar 4, which is going to be inheritable because it does have the yellow border and it doesn't really have the white border like her slotty skill. So Counter Roar 4 does inflict -4 speed and attack debuff on the opponent and reduces damage from foe's first attack by 30%. And again here, the first attack does mean the first and the second strike of a Brave weapon, which is really good. And then unit's next attack is going to be doing damage equal to 30% of the total damage reduced. So it is damage reflection in a way, which we have seen before on Brash Assault and on Ice Mirror. So having this in the slot B is really good. And then finally after the combat, it restores 7 HP to the unit. So she has got the healing, she has got a lot of good things going on for her, and being a fast far save armor is extremely good because she's got like base 46 speed and she's probably going to be having a super boon. So being a fast armor unit means that as it is, you're going to be stopping any kind of natural doubles of the enemies, and she already has full null follow-up in her weapon, so any kind of auto follow-up is not going to be doing much. And if she's going to be facing any kind of brave attacks, then she does have the damage reduction against that, which is, you know, extremely good for facing Bridal Catcher teams and Winter Cordelia teams. So she appears as a pretty strong far save tank, and of course she does come with attack speed far save, which we previously only had on Valentine Takumi, I believe. So overall, I would say that Brave Female Corrin is easily the best far save tank in the game because she's a fast save unit, and like I mentioned before, having a fast save armor is really good, and a lot of times many of the conditional fire sweep effects or sweep effects in general are tied to the speed, so she can many times avoid getting fire swept, which is going to be really helpful in many of the matchups. And she also has pretty good support in the Divine Vein, Stone, Terrain that she can provide, so having this is going to be really good on any of the allies that are going to be run with Brave Corrin. So I feel like even if she gets one-upped as a far save unit, I think the support that she brings in this terrain is really valuable. Now of course it is to be seen how often we get these kinds of terrain effects, like if it's every other banner or like literally every banner and every unit from now on. So it is to be seen, but right now I do think that she's going to be the best save unit in the game. Because she has got 205 BST, so unlike many of the fast far save tanks, she does not really compromise too much on her bulk. She's got like 40 resistance and base 37 defense, which is definitely not bad when she's got like base 46 speed, which is quite a lot. And on top of that, she's a trainee BST armor unit, so for a while I don't think that she's going to be getting one-upped when it comes to her stat spread at the very least. Sure in terms of effects, but still, as far as the effects are concerned, I think she's also pretty good there. The next unit is Brave Soren, and he's a green infantry mage, just like he was the first time when he came in FE, but this time he is much better as a nuke, and he is also very unique as a support unit. So he has got the Archsage Tome, which does give him -1 special cooldown, and at start of turn he can give +6 buff to all of these stats and also the Assign Decoy status to any support partner within 2 spaces of him. And if there's no support partner, then he gives that to the highest defense ally within 2 spaces of him for 1 turn. Assign Decoy is from Fire Emblem Engage, and in FE it definitely works amazingly well, so Assign Decoy pretty much allows whatever unit has got that status to act as a savior unit. So this means that you can save tank with Brave Dimitri with Summer Fiarm, and you can far save tank with stuff like Ninja Camilla. Now it's worth noting that the unit who has got Assign Decoy as the status must have the same range as the foe. So it does not mean that, someone like Brave Dimitri is able to far save and near save at the same time. He can only near save because he's a melee unit. And then Ninja Camilla cannot act as a near save unit. She can only act as a far savior. So that savior effect is going to be triggering because of Assign Decoy, which is extremely powerful and definitely is going to be making a lot of units as a much better tank, because imagine using Summer Fiarm, imagine using any kind of flyer with Guard Bearing 4 as a near savior. That is extremely good. So this makes Soren really viable in stuff like Aether Raids offense and also in Aether Raids defense, because keep in mind that you just need to have the ally with the highest defense within 2 spaces, and this can work in Aether Raids defense. So you can actually have Freyr near save in the anima season, which is pretty insane. And just like the regular save skills, if there are 2 near save skills overlapping, then none of them are going to be triggering. So you cannot really spread this to your entire team using like Citrine and then expecting everyone to save everything. That's not how it's going to be working. It still needs testing, of course, but this is, applying the same rule as the save units. So being able to function as a save tank without being an armor unit is extremely good. Of course, you are limited by what you do with the range that you've got. Like a distant counter, Halloween Duma cannot really far save, but still, you do have more options now, which is going to be what Soren is going to be opening up. With his weapon, if he's within 3 spaces of an ally, then he also gets +5 to all of his stats and also the ally bonus doubler effect, which we have seen time and time again. So he basically takes the highest bonuses for each stat among the allies within 3 spaces of him, and then, just applies that in the combat, which is really good because even if he's facing any kind of opponent with a lull skill, he's not directly going to be, affected. And then finally, he also has Dragon Wall built in, so he has got the 40% damage reduction based on resistance, and he has got pretty high resistance, so he's going to be getting, max damage reduction many times. And then he also has Flair as a special, which I think is probably inheritable because every single one of these units brings some kind of new inheritable skill on the table. So I think Flair is going to be the 3 cooldown inheritable special, where if the unit's HP is at or above 70%, then you're going to be boosting up your special damage by 60% of foes' resistance, which is quite a lot. And if you're below 70% HP, then you can boost up the special damage by 40% of foes' resistance, and also heal up 30% of units' maximum HP. So it can make for a pretty nice healing special, which is going to be good for the bulky mages. So Flair is going to be a mage exclusive special, I think. But still we have to wait for the data mine. And then we've got Rare Talent as the exclusive slot A skill of Brave Soren, and this gives +7 to all of his stats and also disables any kind of adaptive damage, which is really good because Soren has got base 47 resistance, which is really high. So disabling the adaptive damage of the dragon units is going to be really helpful for facing them. And then finally there is also in combat resistance check, and if Soren has got 1 or more resistance than the opponent, then he can get the null guard effect, which is extremely good as a nuke, just ignoring any kind of guard skill. And his weapon does bring down Flair to a 2 cooldown special, and then Time Pulse 4 in his base kit brings down Flair to a 1 cooldown special. So he can basically trigger his Flair on his Brave attack, which is going to be really good. And speaking of Brave attacks, let's go over that. So if he has got 10 or more resistance and a foe is ranged or he initiates combat, then he can basically get the Brave effect. So he can also get the Brave effect in the enemy phase against the ranged opponents, which is really good as he can just quad attack them. And I don't think it's going to be taking him quad attacks to kill many of the units because he's going to be hitting extremely hard with that base 46 attack and with the null guard effect and Flair that he comes with. Of course, against many of the mages and units with high resistance, this is going to be troublesome to meet, but I think that it's still fine because he's always going to be getting the Brave effect in the player phase, which is really good, and he's like the highest resistance unit along with young Lucius in the game, I believe, at base 47 resistance, so you can only go up from there. So he's going to be a pretty solid nuke with that slotty skill. And then he's got Magical Null Follow-Up, which is going to be able to shred through the damage reduction skills by 50%. So it's a really good thing to have if you don't have Special Spiral, and having Null Follow-Up is actually pretty nice. Even though he's not the fastest unit with that base 34 speed, still having the Magical Null Follow-Up shred through the damage reduction is good. And he also has Time Pulse 4, which is going to be going really well with Flair that he comes with. So like I mentioned before, Flair is always going to be at 1 cooldown, which is going to be able to trigger on his Brave hits. And I'm definitely going to be testing him out a lot. I think he's a very fun unit with the Assign Decoy that he brings in. It's a very unique mechanic. And of course, Embla can disable that from her Slotsy skill, but there are still game modes where Assign Decoy is going to be really helpful, like the Chaos Season, where you're only allowed 1 save unit, and some Duels, where you're also allowed 1 save unit. So you're going to be able to break the restriction and actually have another save unit because of Assign Decoy. So that is going to be interesting to say the least. And I think he has got a lot of applications in Aether Raids defense because you can just use the highest defense units like Freya, for example, as a near save tank. So you wouldn't have to run a near save on your team. So that can be really annoying, honestly. And you can just run another nuke in that place. Overall, I think that Brave Soren is pretty good as a nuke, and I know we have seen a lot of nukes, so there, I mean, he's not going to be standing out too much, still, like, he has got the Brave hits and everything, but I think what he really shines as is a support unit with that Assign Decoy, and like I mentioned, it does have, a lot of applications. I'm going to be testing it a lot when we get it tomorrow, but just based off the description and what they have shown us, I do think it's pretty promising. Up next, we have got Brave Gullveig, and she did have Galeforce shenanigans in her original version, so I kind of expected that in her Brave version as well, and she definitely does not disappoint with that. So she is a blue flying mage. In this version, she's not a cavalier actually, and the Cycle's turn is her preferred weapon, which gives her Canto 1, which is extremely good because she's not going to be running any kind of Fortress skill with her exclusive Sloppy skill taking place in her kit. So having Canto 1 in this weapon is really good, and then she gets minus some special cooldown, and if she initiates combat or if any kind of bonus is active on her, then she can get +5 to all of her stats, and then on top of that, she can get even more attack and speed in the combat depending on the number of turns that have passed ×2, and this can go all the way up to max 10. So she can have a lot of offenses in the combat, which is much needed as a Galeforce range unit that especially doesn't have access to damage reduction piercing, and then she can deal true damage based on 20% of her speed. This also includes the AoE specials, which is gonna be, working in her favor. If you do run an AoE special, then she can function as a pretty good nuke who can also Galeforce with her slot B skill. And finally, she has got full null follow-up built in her weapon, which is gonna be helping her quite a lot as a very fast unit with base 47 speed. And then she has got Luna as her special and Flared Sparrow as a new inhittable skill. So I don't know the inhittable restriction of this skill, but I think it's probably going to be for the ranged units, I guess. So if unit initiates combat, it deals 7 damage to the foe as the combat begins, which is extremely good because it is like 7 true damage right out of the bat. And that is going to be helping you just kill opponents much easier. So it is like a pre-combat savage blow, which is absolutely amazing. It also gives +7 attack and speed in the combat, and also applies Divine Vein Flame terrain on 5 spaces in a line centered on foe space. So it is oriented from left to right based on the direction Gullveig is facing for 1 turn after the combat. So basically what Divine Vein Flame does is that it can act as the terrain which is difficult to pass for ranged units. So this is pretty much like a tree tile for an infantry unit, which means that moving over the space of flame is going to be costing them 1 movement. So that is pretty good for hit and run because she can just initiate Galeforce and then run back with Divine Flame active, and then a lot of the ranged units are not going to be able to chase her. This is of course bypassed by warping, so we do have insane guidance for and soaring guidance, which can be annoying. And then at start of enemy phase, it deals 7 damage to foe, and also when the combat begins, it deals additional 7 damage to the foe. So this is like a chip damage machine, and also providing the difficult terrain against the ranged opponents. And keep in mind that this cannot be bypassed by Kadean Lind and her unhindered movement status effect. So that is going to be a disappointment for many people, especially many of the Lind fans. And if you run like Magical Lantern Plus, for example, so you're not going to be able to bypass the movement restriction it imposes on the ranged opponents. And like I mentioned before, Divine Vein status do not stack up. So you cannot stack this up and have like 14 damage at start of the enemy phase, which is pretty insane. So you cannot really do that. And it can replace any kind of existing Divine Vein effect like of Corrin. And it can also get replaced by the other Divine Vein effect. And if 2 Divine Vein effects like apply simultaneously, then both of them will pretty much cancel each other out. So that is our first inhittable Divine Vein effect. In terms of this flame effect in Flared Sparrow, I think we can also get sparrows of other kinds. So it is going to be helping you have this effect on many of the other units who can pretty much do the same hit and run. And Gullveig is definitely amazing at hit and run because of her slot B skill Gold Unwinding. So this inflicts -5 speed and resistance on foe in the combat. And then if her HP is at or above half and in the player phase she initiates combat, then she's going to be having 60% damage reduction from foe's first attack, which is going to be quite a lot. And in the player phase, it does provide her with the safe initiation because a lot of times, unless she's facing any kind of brave effect, she's not going to be getting doubled that often because she is going to be pretty fast. So that 60% damage reduction is going to be making it pretty easy for you to initiate combat with Gullveig and come out without taking too much damage and then get the Galeforce off, which she can do with this skill. So she has got Galeforce, essentially another action after the combat, and she inflicts gravity on herself and the pair up cohort throughout their next action, which is kind of expected, as we have seen this before on Brave Marianne and also on Nurin Zeal of Cyan Leaf and Legendary Leaf. So she basically gravities herself, but still she can teleport, and she does have attack speed Oath 4. Which is really good. And she does have Canto 1, so it does work with her Oath 4 skill and the teleportation of it. So she has got amazing base kit for Galeforcing and for hit and run in Aether Raids offense. And as someone who uses a lot of those strategies in Aether Raids offense, I think she's going to be an amazing unit at that. And she brings a new thing with Divine Vein Flame effect, which allows her to function really well as a hit and run unit. It is going to be hard for her to bypass many of the Farseer tanks for sure, but she can actually run an AoE special and get past them many times because she can get the true damage on her AoE specials. Of course, charging that up is going to be a bit annoying, but still you can try and do that. AoE specials with Galeforce do go really well because you can just chip down the enemy's entire team and then go at it by picking them up with your allies. So she can do that, and I think her main application is definitely going to be in Aether Raids offense, but it is going to be a lot easy to do compared to something like Brave Marianne, for example, who's a lot more niche and is only really useful in like Galeforce team compositions as another dancer. I think Gullveig is a lot more useful just in general with her another action from Gold Unwinding and being a Mage Flier who can hit really hard, and then who can also have this kind of flame terrain going on to reduce the movement of the opponents that are ranged. So it allows you to hit and run much easily, and of course in the Astro season with something like Aether, Gullveig can go absolutely ham and do so much damage to the enemies and even take out their far safe tanks with the Treachery and the Brave effect. Overall, Gullveig is going to be a pretty nice Mage Flier who can function with the Galeforce inner slot B skill, which is going to be unique for a Mage Flier for sure. We did have before, stuff like Legendary Leaf and Cyan Leaf, but they cannot run specials at the same time while running Galeforce, essentially. So she can do that and hit a lot harder. I just wish that she had something to pierce through the damage reduction or get past the guard effect, because those things are going to be pretty annoying and are pretty common among the far safe tanks. The final CYL7 unit is going to be Brave Male Robin, and he does not have 11 sword. Instead, he has got a completely different sword, and he's the sword infantry unit of the batch. And a lot of sword infantries in CYL7s historically have not been the best with Brave Celica and Brave Alm until their weapon refine. Brave Marth was pretty nice, but I think that Brave Male Robin is definitely breaking that tradition, as he is not only just a Godsword, but also a Godsword Slayer with a support. So he has got Deliverer's Brand as a sword, which gives him +3 speed and not -1 special cooldown, which is definitely a surprise, but you'll see later on why this makes sense. So at start of combat, if his HP is at or above 25%, he can get +5 to all of his stats, and also reduces damage from foe's first attack by 40%. And he also has the full tempo effect built in, which means that he ignores any kind of special acceleration and any kind of guard effects. So that can make him a pretty good special spammer, and he can also nullify any kind of percentage based damage reduction of the opponents that are relative in nature, like Close Call, Dragon Wall, stuff like that when he triggers his special, provided that his maximum special cooldown count is more than equal to 3. So he basically needs to run something like Bonfire or something in higher cooldown like Ignis, for example, to pierce through the damage reduction effects. And finally, he can get adaptive damage if he's running Bonfire or Ignis as a special, so he can target the lower of foe's defense or resistance, which is really good and kind of unique as a Godsword in my opinion. So having this kind of adaptive damage does mean that against a lot of the defense polarized tanks, he can just hit them really hard and target their resistance, which is pretty good. And then he has got Ignis, which does work nicely with his weapon, giving him that adaptive damage, and also has attack speed finish 4, which is also going to be working out nicely because he's going to be triggering his specials. And then he has got Gambit 4 as a new inheritable skill. So this can inflict -4 speed and defense debuff on the foe in the combat, and if any kind of attack of unit or foe can trigger unit special, then he can deal true damage based on the unit's maximum special cooldown count, -2, and then multiplied by 5. And this can go all the way up to 15, and this doesn't really include the AoE specials. So with the Ignis that he has come with, this is going to be a 4 cooldown special, so you're going to be able to get 10 true damage in combat, which is going to be pretty nice. And then you can also reduce damage from attacks in the combat and from AoE specials, depending on the maximum special cooldown count of your unit multiplied by 10, and this can go up to 50%. So Robin can get 10 true damage and 40% damage reduction out of the skill, and I think this kind of skill can be really useful on units which don't have -1 special cooldown and on the units that do have to run higher cooldown specials, because running lower cooldown specials doesn't really help you with this skill. So for the units that want to run higher cooldown specials like Bonfire and Ignis, just like Brave Robin, they're going to be able to, take advantage of this skill. And then he has got his exclusive slotsy skill and Tip the Scales. So at start of turn, if he's within 2 spaces of an ally, he can grant the Rally Spectrum status to himself and the allies within 2 spaces of him. And he can also move to a space adjacent to any kind of ally with the Rally Spectrum status that is within 5 spaces of him. So he has got insane teleportation with this skill, and then if he's within 2 spaces of an ally, then he can get +3 to all of his stats. Now Rally Spectrum is a completely new status effect, which is a positive status effect. So it grants +5 to all of the stats of the unit in the combat, and this is not like a visible buff, this is like the in combat stats, which is pretty amazing. And if unit's attack can trigger unit special, which basically means that it has to be a damaging special, it cannot be Galeforce or a defensive special, then it gives you -1 special cooldown if you have a Brave effect on you or if you have a -1 special cooldown weapon. And if not, then you get -2 special cooldown before your first attack. So this is something that we have seen before on Brave Tiki's weapon and also recently on Diamant's weapon. And it is going to be a really amazing support because this helps a lot of the non-meta units and units which don't have -1 special cooldown to loop their Vital Astras, which is absolutely amazing if they want to function as a fast unit. And this is the reason why Brave Robin himself does not have a -1 special cooldown weapon, because he can easily get -2 special cooldown out of Rally Spectrum. So it does help a lot of the free-to-play units and a lot of the older units that do not have -1 special cooldown weapon. Nowadays, as we can see, most units have -1 special cooldown weapons, and this is going to be helping them as well. Another reason why Rally Spectrum is pretty good is because its special charging cannot really be stopped by guard effect of the opponent. The only way that it can stop Rally Spectrum is through Scowl effect, and those are not the most common, but they can get a lot more common in the future. But still, Rally Spectrum is going to be a pretty amazing support that he can provide to a lot of the Omni tanks, for example, and a lot of the allies in general, because this is going to be a status effect that he can just give out like candy. This is not something that is hard to get with his Slotsy skill. So Rally Spectrum is the new support that he brings to the table, and he's definitely much more than just a Godsword or a Godsword Slayer because of the support that he can provide. So that is going to be Brave Male Robin, and he's going to be triggering his Ignis, doing a lot of damage. I really like the design aspect of him, where he has to use these kinds of bonfire or Ignis specials, and he cannot run Vital Astra like all other Godswords. So that is all of our Brave units this time. And we're also going to be getting Cyril as the Grandeur of Battle unit. So he is the trainee BST unit, which means that he can score as much as the previous generation's armor units like Cervantes, for example. So that is pretty insane, and he has got like 193 BST from what we can see in his trailer. And he does have a preferred weapon and also brings Sudden Panic into the Grail pool. So that is a pretty nice Grandeur Battle unit in my opinion, having a lot of function in something like Arena and also bringing a new skill in the Grail pool. So this banner is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be summoning for, because Choose Your Legends is a pretty coveted banner, and at least going to like first spark is something that a lot of people are going to be doing. I'm going to be doing that myself, and from my first impressions and without testing these units, I think that Brave Corrin and Brave Soren are the strongest of the bunch, and I've already stated my reasons before. Brave Corrin being a very powerful safe tank, and Brave Soren, because of having his Assign Decoy, is going to be pretty amazing. So these are my first impressions. This may or may not change depending on, testing these units and playing with them when we get this banner tomorrow. So I'll be updating that whenever I make my banner review. So hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're summoning on the Choose Your Legends banner. I did try my best to explain all of the new skills and everything. And if you did enjoy, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps you tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as save skills against Embla. So with that, still, see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.